These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
Chaos erupted on The View as Karoline Leavitt dropped bombshell revelations that left the hosts scrambling to defend themselves. Democrats in the media are now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary Karoline Leavitt. Watch this. Today, we're breaking down exactly what went down, why her exposé has everyone talking, and what it means for the future of the show. If you've been wondering what really caused this meltdown, you're in the right place. The drama has hit the airwaves, and it's all because of Karoline Leavitt shaking up the political landscape. These women are completely out of touch with reality, and you're right, ABC should wake up. It's no secret that The View loves stirring the pot, but this time, they bit off way more than they could chew. When Karoline Leavitt stepped into the spotlight as Trump's press secretary, Democrats were quick to launch their attacks. She's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is. But their smear campaign didn't just fail, it completely backfired. What started as petty jealousy has now completely backfired, leaving their reputations in shambles. Now, thanks to Karoline's no-holds-barred approach, the hosts of The View are left scrambling to clean up their own mess. And trust me, the fallout is nothing short of spectacular. Joy Behar, a self-proclaimed feminist who constantly preaches about empowering women, just crossed a line that's hard to ignore. Instead of acknowledging Karoline Leavitt's accomplishments, she reduced her success to nothing more than her looks. This hypocrisy is glaring. How can someone claim to stand for women's rights and then tear down a young, successful woman in the same breath? Well, Karoline is in a league of her own and didn't hesitate one bit in calling these woke cronies out. These women are completely out of touch with reality, and you're right, ABC should wake up. But wait a minute, if Karoline is a 10, where does that leave Joy Behar? Well, leave it to Greg Gutfeld from Fox News to deliver the punchline in his signature style. Greg didn't hold back, throwing some major shade at Joy that had everyone talking. And let's just say his commentary didn't do Joy any favors. Honestly, the internet hasn't stopped laughing since. Joy Behar calls her a 10? I mean, how dare she objectify a woman with a sexist rating system? But it's such a typical thing from a 1.5. But Karoline didn't just stop at Joy Behar. She had some choice words for the Democratic propaganda darlings, too. She made it crystal clear, they have two options, either ride the Trump wave or be forgotten. Because once Trump is done with them, they won't have any scandals or media-driven distractions to keep them in the spotlight. Without their usual propaganda machines spinning narratives, their so-called relevance is on borrowed time. The Democrats can either get on board or prepare to lose another election, just like they did on November 5th. And judging by the stunned silence on The View, they felt every bit of that reality check. It's as clear as day to anyone with eyes. The View panel is just jealous that someone younger, sharper, and actually deserving of the spotlight is outshining them. After Joy Behar's crude remarks, Whoopi Goldberg swooped in, trying to spin another narrative that had Americans reeling. She went full mother hen mode, attempting to scold Karoline for what she called a lack of tolerance for weakness. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off, and that was, she said there would be no wokeness here. Oh yeah? Let me explain. Something to you because without that wokeness, you might not have that job. Whoopi wasn't preaching wisdom, she was just scrambling to control the damage. And Karoline, she wasn't having any of it. In a now viral clip, Whoopi tried to blur the lines between civil rights and wokeness, acting like they're one and the same. But Karoline, she wasn't fooled for a second. She called out Whoopi's flawed logic with brutal precision, making it painfully obvious that Whoopi either doesn't know the difference, or is deliberately misleading her audience. And judging by Whoopi's reaction, she felt that burn. Women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds was to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now, to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. If Whoopi is such a fierce supporter of women's rights, then why didn't she call out Joy Behar for reducing Karoline's success just to her looks? Maybe because her so-called moral compass only points left. Instead of holding her co-host accountable, Whoopi took the opportunity to attack Karoline right after the 27-year-old dared to use her first White House press conference to call out the legacy media for losing the trust of everyday Americans. And just like clockwork, Whoopi conveniently pulled the race card, trying to frame the discussion around identity politics rather than addressing the real issue. Classic deflection. Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all women. Whoopi didn't just stop there. She went full condescension mode, claiming that Karoline doesn't even understand what wokeness means. According to Whoopi, the only reason Karoline criticized it was because she thinks it's a terrible thing to be. She claimed, "It's not a terrible thing to be. That's why we fought. That's what we're fighting for, so that you could stand in that podium, so that Karine Jean-Pierre could stand at that podium, so women of all colors and ilk, wherever they came from, whatever their belief system was, they had the opportunity to bust down that door." But let's be honest, Karoline knows exactly what wokeness is, and that's why she called it out. Whoopi's attempt to gaslight the audience into thinking Karoline was just throwing around buzzwords completely backfired. And if the hypocrisy wasn't already sky-high, Karoline really put The View on blast for their latest outrageous claim, trying to pin an assassination attempt on Elon Musk. In a fiery takedown, she pointed out the irony of the hosts constantly pushing for accountability while recklessly spreading baseless accusations. How ironic that Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists. But they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years. She reminded them that just a few years ago, the media was singing a very different tune. But now, they're so desperate to control the narrative that they'll twist anything to fit their agenda. And let's just say Karoline wasn't about to let them get away with it. They likened President Trump to Hitler. They have mocked him, they have shamed him, they have lied about him consistently on their show. And it was a joy to watch them on November 6th when they realized that tens of millions of Americans do not listen to the lies that they have spewed for years. The View and other legacy media outlets have operated without restraint, pushing whatever narrative suited them. They've controlled the conversation, silenced opposition, and shaped public opinion. With little to no consequences, but thanks to Karoline's bold stance, the era of unchecked propaganda is coming to an end. With her push for accountability, these outlets are finally being forced to answer for their reporting. She's young, but she's wise beyond her years, and she has access to the president, which is something someone didn't have. And let's be real, that's their worst nightmare. Because without the ability to spin the truth freely, their entire playbook starts falling apart. Karoline Leavitt just flipped the script on legacy media, and The View is absolutely losing it. She announced a game-changing shakeup in the White House press pool, introducing a new media section to hold traditional outlets accountable for their years of biased reporting and outright misinformation about President Trump. "We will call you out when we feel your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House," Leavitt said. For decades, the Associated Press and the White House Correspondents Association have controlled the room, dictating who gets to ask questions and what narratives get pushed. But not anymore. Karoline made it crystal clear, these legacy media outlets won't get to run the show unchecked. Instead, 2 front-row seats, once reserved for White House staff, will now go to new media voices who actually question the establishment. And if that wasn't enough to send The View into a meltdown, she also restored press passes for 440 journalists who were wrongfully revoked under Biden's administration. "The president doesn't surround himself by anybody smart," said Joy Behar in her panel. Of course, this was going to happen. This is why conservative women just have to move on, do their thing, and not worry about the criticism from folks like The View. And we are expecting the media to be hostile. While many praised this push for transparency, The View panel had a very different reaction. Because let's be honest, the last thing they want is a press corps that actually challenges their narrative. "Starting today, this seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat," she said. My team will review the applications and give credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass United States Secret Service requirements to enter the White House complex. And right on cue, the View panelists completely lost it. Sunny Hostin scoffed at the idea of new media reporters being qualified to attend briefings, acting like only the legacy media elites deserved a seat at the table. Then Whoopi chimed in with her usual holier-than-thou attitude, warning that under the new administration, people would just spout stuff. I don't always like the way they do it, she said, but we have to have ourselves together. We can't just say stuff. In spite of what they tell you, we can't just spout stuff. So I want that for everybody. Oh, the irony, because for years, mainstream media, including The View, has been doing exactly that, pushing half-truths, twisting narratives, and spouting whatever fits their agenda. But now that Karoline Leavitt is actually holding them accountable, suddenly Whoopi wants to talk about standards. Give me a break. She was conflating two ideas. The word, wokeness, didn't seem like she really understood what it meant, certainly not the way Karoline Leavitt meant it when she made that statement. Whoopi was conflating it with civil rights, talking about how women didn't have the right to vote or own property. That has nothing to do with wokeness, which, of course, is about putting people in positions based on their immutable characteristics rather than the merit they bring to the table. At the end of the day, it's not really about journalism or ethics, it's about attention. These hosts thrive on being in the limelight, dictating what the public should think. And the fact that millions of Americans are now ditching traditional media for alternative sources? That's the real reason they're panicking. Because for the first time in years, they're losing control of the narrative, and they hate it. The 27-year-old, who made history as the country's youngest press secretary, scolded traditional media for losing trust and said millions of Americans are instead looking to other outlets for information. Their news. We know for a fact that there have been lies that have been pushed by many legacy media outlets in the country about this president, about his family, and we will not accept that. She stated, "We will call you out when we feel your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House." And now, The View is finally feeling the heat. For years, they've had the luxury of running their mouths without any real pushback, spreading misinformation, smearing political opponents, and gaslighting their audience. But those days are now officially over because now they have someone keeping them in check, and that someone is none other than Karoline Leavitt, the history-making press secretary who just put the entire legacy media on notice. And let's not forget who Karoline replaced, Karine Jean-Pierre, who made sure to remind everyone at every opportunity that she was the first black immigrant woman to hold the role, as if identity alone qualifies someone for the job. But competence speaks louder than labels, and Karoline Leavitt has proven that real leadership isn't about ticking diversity boxes. It's about holding power accountable and speaking for the American people. Even Jen Psaki, who came before Jean-Pierre, wasn't a fan of the women echoing each other's strategy, calling it diminishing. And yet, The View continues to play the identity card over and over, hoping no one notices how hollow their arguments really are. But Karoline, she's not playing that game. She's here to do the job and do it well. But The View wasn't done embarrassing themselves just yet. After failing to take Karoline down with their cheap shots, they tried to trap her with a classic gotcha question about illegal immigration. They thought they had her cornered. They thought she'd fumble. Spoiler alert, she didn't. 500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office. Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally? All of them. Because they illegally broke our nation's laws. They wanted her to admit that Trump's policies would somehow be unfair to illegal immigrants, but Karoline, she flipped the script and reminded them that Trump's America prioritizes law-abiding citizens over those who break the law. And just like that, their entire argument fell apart. But instead of admitting to defeat, they doubled down with even more desperate attempts to spin the narrative. As far as this administration goes, I know the last administration didn't see it that way. So it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal. But that's exactly what they are. They love to act like they care about justice, but let's be real, this wasn't about defending immigrants. This was about pushing their tired left-wing narrative and trying to trip up a woman who was way too smart to fall for it. Oh, she's having the time of her life watching them scramble, and I loved it. You know why? Because I work for a president who is getting things done, who is delivering on the promises he made to the American people. She knows exactly what she's doing. And she's not just standing her ground, she's enjoying every second of watching these so-called media elites struggle to keep up. Because here's the thing, Karoline isn't just taking on The View, she's taking on the entire legacy media machine. And she's doing it with a smile on her face. Karoline isn't just exposing The View, she's exposing their entire playbook. There is so much good news, so much winning out of the Trump White House right now, that the mainstream legacy media can't keep up with it. She knows exactly how the game is played, and she's making sure everyone else does too. For years, legacy media has controlled the narrative, twisting facts to fit their agenda. But now, Karoline is shutting it down in real time. And the best part? The more they try to fight back, the more they prove her point. In a final blow, Karoline dropped the ultimate truth bomb. The View has been so wrapped up in catering to the left that now they're completely lost. And the Democrats are in complete disarray because they have become a globalist party who like to spend taxpayer dollars on useless priorities just to cater to the left's demands here at home. For years, they've been nothing more than a mouthpiece for the Democratic agenda, blindly echoing whatever narrative they were handed. But now, with Karoline calling the shots and holding the media accountable, they don't know what to do with themselves. They've spent so long pushing the left's demands that the moment someone challenges them, they crumble. And Karoline, she's loving every second of it. And just like that, The View has been completely exposed, their hypocrisy, their bias, and their desperation to hold on to relevance. Karoline Leavitt didn't just call them out, she forced them to face their own downfall in real time. The vast majority of Americans want the people in Washington to be good stewards of their tax dollars. They don't agree with these radical priorities of the left, and so that's why the president is going to continue to do this. The Democrats can either get on board or they can prepare to lose another election. But this is just the beginning. With the media landscape shifting, legacy outlets like The View are scrambling to control and failing miserably. So the question is, how much longer can they keep up this charade? What do you think? Are we witnessing the end of mainstream media dominance, or will they find a way to weasel their way back into power?